and just forget about it.
And I played against Switzerland at Stamford Bridge, and I was playing left half in front of George Hardwick. He and I come from the same area, of course. And we were given a free kick just inside the Swiss half, and maybe about 10 yards inside the Swiss half. And George Hardwick said, "Go up." And I went up the wing. Well, you know, if it was going to achieve nothing else, it was going to possibly bring a player out of the goal area. That's what happened, actually. So instead of pushing the ball along the wing to me as the thing that was probably his first intention, he played the ball into the goal area for the simple reason that there wasn't much point in playing it along to me because, you know, I was marked there. Snorter Green came in after the match into the England dressing room,
Welshman.
no ceremony, and he said, "Hey you, can't you take free kicks?" He said, "Don't you let him take your free kicks again." But this was him, and this is the relationship we had with one another. You know, nobody was offended, but it was only a Snorter Green who would have had the cheek to do anything like that. I remember we were playing at Sunderland, and we always stayed at the Roker Hotel, just along from where Jimmy Seed came from in Whitburn. And there were some commercial travellers or whatever at the hotel, and they were hogging the billiard table, you see. It was billiards in those days, not snooker. And George Green was sitting, we were all round, and we were watching impatiently. One or two of them badly wanted to get on the table. And so he started to talk and make remarks, you know, so they could hear. And they got so irritated. And, well, it got them worked up. They were annoyed and, you know, they protested about him making any comments. And he got worse and worse, and they cleared off, and we got the table. But that was Greeny.
He hasn't changed.
Unfortunately, he had a terrible tragedy. When they were building, what they call the roads, just on the Blackheath Road.
Ricklemarsh and around that way.
Well, it was where all the players lived at the time, and there was a pool of water left, you know, I suppose. Some big wheels had made these deep holes, and rainwater had filled them, and his little boy was drowned.
Terrible shame, isn't it?
He was a good player, George Green.
He was a bit dogged by injury, wasn't he?
Yes, yeah.
But he's him and his wife, Connie.
Connie, yes,
they're amazing couple. On one hand, you've got George jumping around and reenacting all these stories, and George is shouting and running out the door, knocking the door, coming back in. Go on, kicking the ball. He's going like this all the time. It's very colourful language.
Oh,
as well.
that's right.
And you've got Connie sitting there quite serenely, quite quiet, saying, "George, shut up, George, sit down, George."
But who was it? Leslie Fells. He used to play centre forward for Gillingham. He was the most popular player, I should think, in the third division, just about. And he became coach for Gillingham. And he came from the same local team that I came from, up in the northeast, where George Hardwick and Wilf Mannion and all these people came from. Not the same club, but the same little town, South Bank. And I didn't know at the time, he followed me as I left South Bank. He went into the South Bank team, and he just told me that on the phone when he rang up some time ago. And he and Leslie fell like that, you know.
Who's that?
Oh, what do they call him? Russell. What's his first name? Russell. He was ever so popular with the Gillingham people. And when the third division picked a representative side, he would normally be expected to be in it. I can see Charlie Revel there much more clearly than on the other photograph. He looks like Tommy Trinder on there.
Yeah. And that's George's daughter.
Oh, yes. Yes. There's the Dallas again, yes.
He's a nice man, Sid.
Oh, he was a nice chap altogether. Yeah.
There's, I mean,
These are topical times photographs, aren't they?
yeah, yeah.
I have a couple of cartoons by Sid Jordan upstairs.
Yeah, there used to be a lot of those, isn't there, in the papers?
Yes, yes.
Sid Jordan's, the other one's Gittins.
Yeah.
Oh, Gittins. But there was a lot of interest in that. It's only a fairly small exhibition, and there was an awful lot of interest in it.
It's fascinating, but you know, it was just something else. Funnily enough, it was a great ground for visiting teams. I don't mean they did well there, because they didn't. They got a little change out of Charlton, but they were always appreciated. A good visiting team was always appreciated, and
You mean by the crowd?
By the crowd. They were given credit for what they did, but not only that, it was very accessible as far as the general London area was concerned, and it doesn't matter which provincial team comes down to London. There's always support in London for them.
Yeah.
And we used to have a lot of people come to see the visiting team.
Yeah, it was, well, I think every Charlton supporter was absolutely heartbroken when they left. But, because I was down there the other day, and the old grandstand is now gone, completely demolished.
I suppose you've heard the story of that, have you?
What's that?
How Jimmy Trotter was on ambulance duty during the war,
No, I haven't heard this.
and his station was the stand at Charlton. And when they dropped incendiaries, they piled stuff on top so that the lot would go up instead of trying to put it out. This is true. They actually tried to get the thing, and it wouldn't burn. It should have done, because it really was like a tinderbox, really. And Jimmy told us that story times, how they really tried to get that to blaze so that it would be insured and would get, because before the war, Albert Blixton said to Jimmy Seed that he would like to build a new super stand, you see, but he required an assurance from Jimmy Seed that they would stay in the First Division. They'd just got into the First Division. They'd had a first year in the First Division, and I think finished runners-up. But he wanted an assurance that after the war we would be able to retain
Top-class football.
yeah. And Jimmy Seed wasn't the kind of man who would have given that, you know. He would have been brash and said, "Wheels," you know.
Yeah.
But he didn't do that.
But what football manager would?
No, you couldn't do that. And of course, I think they were just a little bit doubtful about whether they should do it or not. And then they were badly let down for the simple reason that they were negotiating for that piece of ground just outside the main entrance to Charlton, where those houses were built.
Well,
You remember?
the builder's yard?
No, not the builders' yard.
On the other side?
On the other side, adjacent to the railway. And I'm sure I'm telling you right in this, that the man who was their agent was also agent for the builders. And the builders got it. What do they call it? Do you remember? It has a name. When you've gone, I'll remember it. But those houses were built, and what Charlton wanted to do was
by Ransom Walk?
Yes.
Galleon.
It's just where you go out of the main entrance and under the
bridge.
railway.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's on your right as you walk out. And that was going to be a station within the valley area.
Which would have made so much sense.
It would. And of course, they were very upset at not getting that piece of ground. But as I say, that was around the time that they were talking about this big super stand. But they'd done so well, you know, fourth, third, second, first, that I suppose they were keen to, you know, to sort of build a better ground.
Well, I mean, the situation, the site, actually the valley site, I mean, it's such a natural arena anyway, and the amount of space, the amount of land there, I mean, without extending, I mean, there was, I don't know, 10 or 11 acres there altogether. More before the flats were built at the Valley Grove end, when the banking went right up all the way around. And there was a missed opportunity, because there was such, you know, they had so much space there. Could have been a top-class stadium.
Yes.
I mean, it was the largest stadium, but it wasn't a top-class stadium, facilities-wise and what have you. I mean, the facilities for the supporters were minimal.
That's right. Well,
it
was crude, really, wasn't it? And yet, you know, to us, well, you know, we thought it was the best ground in the world. George Allison, Arsenal manager, he came from the same place that I come from, Teesside. Lancelot, Eric. Do you ever see anything of him?
I've got a phone number
Plumstead
for him.
Common.
He's in Whitstable, I think.
Whitstable, is he?
Whitstable, I think he's living. I've got a
He
phone
was
number for him. I'll get in contact with him.
He was a great character. There's some great chaps. I had the greatest respect for most of the Charlton players. In fact, you know, I had no disrespect that I can remember for any of them, but I had a particular respect for Tommy Dawson.
You had a particular respect for Eric Lancelot?
No, not just particularly for Eric Lancelot. I did have respect for Eric Lancelot, but what I mean, I was going to say I had a particular respect for all the Charlton players, because they all seem to know so much about the game. Now, you know, there's knowledge and knowledge, and lots of people talk a good game, but I was amazed, you know, going into the dressing room and hearing people talking football in the way that they talk football. It was substantial. It wasn't airy-fairy, not theories, you know what I mean. And when you had a team meeting, they knew what they were talking about, these people, and you learned. And I had a terrific respect for them, and you know, you would accept somebody telling you on the pitch to do such and such a thing, because you knew they knew what they were talking about. And Jack Shreve behind me at left back would often prompt me, and I would just accept whatever, you know. And that's how it was.
I suppose you played up with Jimmy Oakes as captain, did you?
No, but I knew Jimmy Oakes very well. Unfortunately, Jimmy Oakes didn't come back after the war, but I met him on a number of occasions up in the Midlands, because he was a Midlands man. He came from the Stoke area originally, but he was a man with a great head for the game.
Well, this is what so many of the players said to me.
He had to be. He wasn't built on a sort of athletic basis. He was a little stocky, sturdy, give nothing away type of character, and he had to do it by grey matter.
Both Bert Brown and Don Welsh have both said he was
right.
the best fullback in the Football League.
Well,
he should have been capped. And as a tactician and a football mind, he was
that's right.
second to none.
He was a thinking player, you know. Yeah. I have that cartoon, the original of that.
Do you?
That's the old photograph.
I think that particular...
in this sense that we were really almost like a provincial team, that we lived and moved and had our being among the local populace, and you got to know people as personal friends.
Yeah.
There were snags in that, because when it came to ticket times,
Yeah.
yeah.
They'd be queuing out saying, "Well, come on."
But yes, you really lived among them. You weren't aloof from them in any way, and it was great to be like that. This is a good magazine, isn't it?
It is very, very good, very well thought out, and it's very well written as well. It's intelligently written. We're quite cynical sometimes, but it's just important because it gives the supporters a voice, which they haven't got with the programme, and they haven't got with the Supporters Association. I mean, as a result of this, they started a Valley Supporters Club, because they decided that the Charlton Athletic Supporters Association was doing nothing.
Yeah.
They were just arranging travel to away matches. They weren't doing any more. They were yes men in front of the board of directors, in front of the management of the club. And so with the forming the Valley Supporters Association and bringing out this magazine, eventually now the two have amalgamated, and the editors of this are now on the board of the Supporters Association, which is good. And you don't want yes men all the time. You want people who are going to stand up and not be afraid to say what needs to be said.
There's certainly plenty of reading in this.
There is, isn't there? There is. Have you seen pictures of the valley?
That's a terrible picture there, isn't it?
Well, I've got some colour ones here that I took about 15 months ago, and it's they're very sad. If you remember Complete Valley,
I think everyone isn't sentimental, but whatever measure of sentiment you have, somehow or another, your original club, your grassroots, always figures in your thinking. The first result you look for, all that sort of thing, even though you've gone to other clubs.
So you still look at Charlton first?
Charlton, because, it was just so much etched on my thinking altogether. You just felt you owed a great deal to those days.
Yeah. It's the same when you're a child. I mean, I think about the house that I lived in when I was growing up, and I have great sentimental attachment to that house.
Yes.
And if I ever go back
right.
to the town, I want to just go past the house and have a look at it from the outside.
Yes.
Just to remember.
Well, that's right. It's meaningful to you, isn't it?
When they
See,
say
there were such happy days. This was the thing. I mean, I can't remember unhappy days at Charlton. There were happy days. You sort of look forward to going to the ground the next morning. You went in anticipation of something, You didn't just thought, oh, here we go again. Nothing of that order. You went back and you felt your blood starting to pump through your veins, this sort of thing. Just as though you were going for a match. But it was great. The company was great. It was always enjoyable to be there.
I think it's marvellous. That's one of the things that's come out an awful lot.
Suppose you've heard about the larking in the dressing room, about cold water and sawdust and...
No, I haven't, no.
Well...
Elaborate.
Well, it was always one of those things. We had a common bath, a big square bath, probably not quite as big as this room. You probably get a picture.
I think there is one.
And somebody walking through from the one dressing room to the other would only have a basin of water or something, cold water, and throw it. Well, that was red rag to a bull. Nothing incensed the players more than that. And of course, what went on from there was nobody's business. The trainers, they were furious. They really were.
Would this gone between the two teams?
Not between two teams.
Just within the Charlton team.
You know, with so many strict for training in the one dressing room and so many in the other, and the bath was between the two. There were two baths, one for the visitors, of course, and one for the home team, but there was an intermediate door. I think everybody would say the biggest perpetrator was Chris Duffy. He didn't mind cold water one little bit, but he knew everybody else did. But the thing was, Bert Chase, who was groundsman, had a little place where he kept sawdust to keep it dry, and maybe a bit of fertilizer or something. He would go and get a handful. Have you ever had your hair wet? And somebody throwing sawdust down. You're coming up for days, you know. Do you know, players used to have to go home in a football shirt, and this, I'm talking about something that didn't happen once. It happened probably at least once a week, I can't remember accurately now, but regularly people would go home in a football shirt because they couldn't wear their own. What used to happen was that the one who was going to throw water, you see, it got out the bath, it dried, it probably had some little bit of treatment in the trainer's place. He'd come through the home dressing room, through the home bath place, and he was wearing somebody's shirt who was in the bath. And thinking, well, they won't throw water at me this way, you know. But the others couldn't have cared less whose shirt it was, as long as it wasn't theirs. And of course the water was thrown. And the poor fella, he had to go home in a football shirt. Times that happened. Most of the players would tell you they've gone home like that. But the trainers were furious. They had to clean up all the mess.
This is Alec Hurd
and of course you can imagine a bath that's got sawdust in it.
The facilities at the Valley, I mean, for the men's toilets to be a concrete fence with a black bit painted on the bottom. I mean,
you know, this seating, this red seating here, just where you can see it actually, this is where the players come out, isn't it? We were playing Sunderland, and it had snowed, and we hadn't had these seats very long because in front of the original seating, where the boarding was and is, I think, or where it was, this was just ordinary terracing. But they'd put these seats in, they were just new, but the snow just drifted in, and of course there was no protection against the weather. So when the ball went into there, nobody could come down because of the boarding. The difficulty wasn't coming down, it was getting back because it was higher, you see, to get back. Anyhow, Len Shackleton went to retrieve a ball over there, and he sat down in the third row seat and threw it in.
Well, I took the throw from the seat.
Sitting in the... We were made to take it again, of course. And in that same match, this was at the time when the white ball was introduced at the referee's discretion. And it was 0-0 with about 10 minutes to go, and we should have slain them. But somehow goals wouldn't come, and the ball was like a big roly-poly. You know, it was the old ball, the old leather ball. And their players, Len Shackleton among them, were all moaning, what about the white ball, ref? What about the white ball? They were following him around. They wanted, and for the last 10 minutes, the white ball came on, and we put 3 in. And it was their players who were moaning, you know. Yeah,
I suppose the new ball coming would have been lighter as well, wouldn't it?
Oh, it was. The old ball.
This must have been saturated.
When you headed it, phew, it was just like a curtain being drawn, you know. I tell you. And when you played against Portsmouth and Dougie Reid took a free kick against you, and you were the one who had to stick his head to that ball, I tell you, you asked some of them, they've all had it. You used to come away like this, walking like this with your head on your shoulders. Oh. But while the white ball, you know, the white ball doesn't make for entertainment like the other ball did, although if I was telling the truth, I'd say I'd rather play with a white ball.
Well, do you not think that when the brown leather ball was getting, the old T-balls were getting very heavy and saturated, did they not slow the game down, or? Do you think the heavy ball was still possible to play exciting open football?
Yes,
Yeah.
it was exciting. I know there was a melee in the midfield, in the centre circle occasionally, maybe in a goal mouth. But you adjusted to this, and the speed of the game wasn't the same in those days. I mean, it wasn't helter-skelter. It would be built up and it would be slowed down. In other words, it was sort of being regulated all the time. And all these things were considerations. The state of the ground, the state of the ball, the weather conditions, everything was a consideration. So much so that you sort of... It's the same thing, you see. Look at this one.
Is it confusing?
It's the same... Yes, we'll go to the room.
No, you stay there, right?
It's the same thing with these...
And where was this?
That's in the grandstand.
These all-weather pitches. I've watched games on these all-weather pitches, and I've hardly seen what I would consider to be a good game. It required particular techniques that a lot of the players weren't capable of, and balls that shouldn't have bounced sky high were shooting over people's heads. And I watched Liverpool at Luton, and they couldn't play. This wasn't Liverpool.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't the Liverpool I knew, and they just could not play because the ball was untamable. It was just ridiculous.
Well, they're horrible to play on as well. I've played on them, and I mean,
Well,
you get cut to shreds. You slide.
You will do.
You get
You
burns.
get burns,
You get
yes.
burns, which are very, very painful. And
I've never
the skin-
played on one.
took the skin off both knees,
Yeah.
and it took 2.5 weeks for the wounds to dry.
Yeah.
They were just weeping pus all the
That's
time.
right.
2.5 weeks. I've still got the
That's
scars now. It's 2
Yes,
weeks ago.
yes.
And because they coat it with sand to try and absorb a bit of the bounce. But that just makes the surface like an
Well,
ice
they've done a
rink,
number of things to
slipping.
try and deaden it, haven't they? But no, I didn't see anything detrimental in the old surfaces, providing it was a well-prepared and
Yeah.
well-taken care of surface. It was the same with the old ball, although, as I say, I would maybe say if I had a straight choice, well, I'd rather have the white ball. But when I see players today who can't reach the goal mouth with a cross, with a white ball, you know, it makes you think.
Because they also, was it in the 70s that they actually lightened the regulation weight was reduced, wasn't it? From
I'm not sure. I should know, but I don't.
I'm sure I remember something about that happening. Because I'm in football today, I mean it's very light, and they should be able to bang it across the goal now. You should be able to bang it right across the other side if you need to.
They should. They should. That's right. Just look at that now.
This,
That's Louis Steve's office.
yeah.
Me one day, when our skipper
Mm-hmm.
to talk. That's a good one, isn't it? Prophet.
And that was in January, just before they announced they were going back.
You can't believe it. It was a beautiful pitch. You know, it dropped from one corner to the diagonally opposite corner.
Did it?
Yeah. To that. No, where are we? No, not to. From that corner to this corner, it fell. I think it was 2 feet. I couldn't believe it.
Really?
Now you'd have to verify that.
Yeah.
Because memory plays you false, doesn't it? But that's looking up at the Charlton Heights. I think you would find that pitch dropped, and you'd have said it was like as level as a billiard table.
Well, it always looked level to me.
But the only time you could tell was if you'd had a deluge of rain or snow that had melted, and it
Was that one corner that got flooded?
remained in that corner. The corner nearest to the river, of course.
You're going to say that one day when you were captain, Jimmy C called you in.
He sent for me to come in, and he started to talk to me about 2 of the players.
Sorry, sticking to the thing.
I was green enough to start and defend them. And he said, Don't try to tell me, Bert. I sent for you to tell you. And that's how he was.
Mm.
He didn't brook any directions from anybody else.
Mm.
He made the conditions, and he told you what was what.
That was it.
And here I was defending. I wasn't defending them against what he was saying. I was just defending them in general terms.
Mm.
That's what he said to me.
How did you get on with Jimmy C?
Great.
Yeah.
Great. I couldn't say anything detrimental about him. I know people moan about managers. It's a way of life moaning about managers. But we had great respect. And I loved him for what he was, in a sense, because he was just a football fanatic.
Mm.
We beat Newcastle 6-2 one day at the Valley. And his wife was in the passageway. They were waiting to go, his wife and his daughter. And she said, I said, I bet he'll be happy this weekend. She said, yes. She said, it's just another weekend that we'll have peace till Monday morning. Yeah, that's how he was. He lived his life by football.
Mm.
He really was a fanatic. Anything could happen as long, even with golf. He was a great, keen golfer, but it didn't compare with football.
Mm.
He lived for football. He really did.
What about as a manager?
Well,
he was one of the
I feel I learned a lot, one way and another, about the management side after I finished actually playing.
Mm.
So that what I used as yardsticks during my playing career was from the playing point of view.
Mm.
In other words, we're all critics of management until we get into management, and then we learn other things that are different values from the values we've held.
Mm.
And it's always the same, isn't it? If you have one perspective, a thing seems quite different from another perspective. And we always saw things from the player's point of view, but he never got away from football, you see. He wouldn't talk about other things.
Mm. Just football.
Just football.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, he was 101% football. I mean, they've called other people Mr. Football, but for me, he just had to be the one.
I think one of the criticisms that was levelled at him was that he was, whether it was the restraints that was put on him by the Blickstein brothers and the board of directors.
Never.
But
Jimmy Seed was an autocrat.
Yeah.
Nobody told him what to do.
Even when it came to money.
Maybe.
If he wanted to buy someone, or there wasn't money available.
I don't know when it came to, but Albert Blickstein worshipped Jimmy Seed.
Mm-hmm.
He did really. He thought there was nobody like Jimmy Seed, Albert Blickstein.
Mm-hmm.
Later, after he died early in life, really, middle life. But I think anything that was reasonable and within possibility, he would have conceded.
Mm.
When he went, I think maybe the other directors became a little bit stronger, but they were all in his shadow when he was alive.
Yeah.
And Stanley Blickstein, his older brother, I think he was the older one, Stanley, he didn't have the business acumen or anything else that Albert had.
Mm.
Albert was the one who saw the possibilities at the Valley when they were still over at Leighton Orient, as it was then.
Mm.
And they brought Jimmy Seed with them, and Jimmy Seed could do no wrong in Albert's eyes.
Mm.
None whatever.
Because to sort of my sort of looking in, having obviously never been around at that time, the team and the squad before the war, but essentially it was the same squad of players that Jimmy C built up for next to nothing, apart from buying Don Welsh.
That's right, £3,000 from
top
Torquay.
buy, wasn't he, Don
Yeah.
Welsh? But then after the war, although the team were very successful in the F.A.Cup, 2 finals in a row, 46, 47 winners and 47, but the league success was sort of ebbing away, culminating in 10 years
That's
later
right.
at relegation.
That's right.
And when you won the cup, you were languishing at the bottom of the first division. Why? Why did that happen? Was his?
Well,
was he?
I think really speaking, it was. Well, it was obviously due to a number of things, but really speaking, the players grew old together.
Mm.
When we resumed, we had a nucleus of the pre-war team, and we were able to fill the gaps with players who weren't just as young as sometimes you would have preferred. The older players, as I say, grew all together, and while you could replace the odd player, you couldn't replace them in 3s and 4s. I mean, there's Jimmy Oakes, George Green, Bert Turner, Sam Barham. Sam played on, of course. The goalkeepers don't enter into this type of thing the same. George Tadman, Sailor Brown, Don Welsh. They were all getting on, you might say, in football terms. Now, when I came back from the forces, I was 30. You see, and I'd been the young chap before the war.
Yeah.
I was a boy among men. Well, I wasn't just a boy, not in that sense, but you know what I mean. Knowledge-wise, football-wise, all this sort of thing. When the war broke out, I was just a young chap, just new virtually into the club by comparison with the rest. Now, you know, you add 6 or 7 years onto those ages, and you're covering most of the team. And of course, that is what happened when we played in the first cup final. Jack Oakes was 44, I think.
He was the oldest.
He was the oldest. So, you know, that's one of the reasons. And you, as I say, you can't replace them in clusters. Now, before the war, players, potential players, were more available. You know, you've heard the story about how they could go up to the pit head and shout down, "Send me 2 up." It's only a story, but it was virtually like that. I mean, Jimmy Seed's brother. We'll move.
That's why you were going in the other room, really, but
I don't know whether this is relevant. I'm saying it to you. But
It's very interesting.
the fact is that while he could, before the war, pick up a couple of potentially good players, like Jimmy Seed's brother came to Spennymoor, saw Tommy Dawson and me. The next thing, Jimmy Seed came up, and we were at the Valley. And I counted myself a young player in Spennymoor team, because I was playing with a lot of has-beens and you know, old players who knew how to play, knew the game, but had had their day. Anyway, Spennymoor was that kind of a club. Every year they could change the team, or by half they could change the team, and still win cups and trophies and all the rest. And they did that after we left. Anyhow, we found after the war that things weren't just as easy as that, and one of the reasons was that you had young men serving their military service as conscripts for 2 years, and a lot of them, they lost their interest. You know, they felt that their careers were being thwarted in a sense. And I remember Tommy Lumley's brother, Bobby, who looked to be a better prospect than Tommy had been, and he was better equipped physically for the job. And Jimmy Seed made me manager of Bexley Heath and Welling. Now, before the war, they'd been our official nursery, but at the end of the war, it was ruled that there were to be no official nurseries. That was to finish. So we had Bexley Heath and Welling again as an unofficial nursery. And I had a free hand there as manager, and I was paid by Charlton, and my job really was to try and find players to fill gaps. Now, we got ever so many, and this was why that arrangement finished. There were a couple of directors who were buddies at Bexley Heath who were incensed at the way we lost all the young players we raised.
Mm.
And one could understand that. We were playing in the Kent League and we were a team of boys playing men, but, you know, everywhere we went, people were saying, why can't we have a young team like these, you know?
Mm.
There was Eddie Wurge, there was Johnny Sewell, there was Taffy Edwards, there was Ken Titchcombe, you, Johnny West, and Charlton got a dozen within 18 months from us. And they were all players, you probably remember them, I don't know whether you do, but they were all players who made the grade and made a living in football. And they played alongside Sid Ellis when he was playing. And of course these two directors got the hump about this, and Jimmy Seed sent for me one day, and I'll tell you this, but this is for your own ears. When I agreed to take the job, Jimmy Seed explained to me that it was an apprenticeship and he wanted me to go back one day to the Valley. So I went along, and in the meantime the Players' Union, which was just starting to tick again after the war, Players' Union got players a rise from £16 a week. Was that it? Or was it from 12 to 16? I'm not sure. But it was one of those rises that came along. And it was a rise of £4. And Jimmy Seed sent to me to go to the Valley. And I popped in. I used to go down every morning anyway at 9 o'clock and do an hour's training just to keep in condition. And then I would go out and do whatever needed doing at Bexley Heath. And
So what year did you go to Bexley Heath?
I can't remember. It would be around, I don't know whether it was before 1950 or after 1950. Don't ask me dates. Anyway, he said, how much are Bexley Heath paying you? I said they're paying me what was arranged. We'll say £16. No, I'd say £12. No, 16 I think it was. So he said, are you sure? That's right. I thought, this is very funny. Fancy him asking me. He knew he was there when all the arrangements were made. He wanted to see that I was protected, you know, against anything other than fairness. So he didn't say anything to me, he didn't tell me. But it was Jack Phillips who afterwards told me. He said the players had got this £4 rise, and it was no part of my arrangement, and I accepted that I was no longer a player. But Charlton, Jimmy Seed, paid Bexley Heath that extra £4 with the original money that they'd promised to pay me, so that I wouldn't lose out from being a player to being manager of Bexley Heath. And they didn't tell me.
Bexley Heath didn't tell you?
They didn't tell me. And their treasurer, I don't know who else but him knew, probably nobody else, but he was not paying me the other £4.
So
I didn't know about it, you see, I hadn't been told.
So what's the whole arrangement with the sort of the banning of the nursery clubs, if you like, and you being paid by Charlton even though you were in position at Bexley?
That was all right, that was
okay?
permissible. That was okay, yes. Yes, that was okay. It was just that there couldn't be an official nursery. I mean, it was only making it a backdoor job, so that you got round it the other way. But we had other players at Bexley Heath. We could pick them up right, left and centre. And it wasn't that we had people doing a lot of scouting for us, and we missed some great players. I begged Jimmy Seed to go for Jimmy Greaves. Now, I'm not for a moment saying that we would have got him.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. But the Brentford scout had just had the sack. And he was a little ordinary man, like lots of these local scouts were. You know, a little flat cap type of thing. And he and I had a rapport. I don't know how it began, but he rang me one day to tell me that Brentford had sacked him. And he was very sore because Brentford was everything to him. And he said, there's a match over here. It was at Ealing. there's a match over here. He said, it's just along from my place. I wonder if you could come next Saturday morning. It's 2 schools teams. One's, now, I can't remember exactly, one's this part of London and the other is the other part of London. And he said, there's some good players. And he said, I wanted Brentford to take them, but he said, this has happened to me. So he said, I'd rather you got them. So I went over, and there's a little knot of people on the touchline, and they viewed us looking down the noses. They saw me with this scout. What was his name? I don't know, he's dead now. Anyhow, the top and bottom of it was, there was Bill Nicholson, who was then, I don't know what he was, assistant manager, and Arthur Rowe, and all these teachers, was obviously that they were on the inner circle. And we weren't very welcome. So we'd gone to see a little fella called David Cliss. He played for Chelsea. He was on Chelsea's books. And he'd been on television and in a schoolboy international, and he'd scored a hat-trick, and of course his name was in big lights, But I couldn't take my eyes off this other inside forward. And he came from Dagenham. So we didn't know his name. The teachers wouldn't tell us. So there were a lot of kids, as there always are, running around the dressing rooms afterwards, outside the dressing rooms. It was just a local pitch, you see. See if you can find out who was the boy with the number 10 shirt in white. So the kid was no time. He was back, and he said, it's Greaves of Dagenham. So that did for us, you see. So this was Saturday morning, and I went back to the valley on my way back to Bexley Heath, and I said to Jimmy Seed, I've seen a real jewel. And I told him what had happened. He just dismissed it. He said, Ted Fenton will have him, West Ham, you see. He didn't want to know. He just said Ted Fenton will have had him. And I went there to see him again on the Monday morning. And I said to him, did you do anything about this boy Greaves of Dagenham? I said, he really is something. And I said how, I told him the whole thing as I've told you it, about Bill Nicholson and Arthur Rowe. And he wasn't very interested. And just to placate me, I think, he more or less agreed that he would send somebody along. I forget the name of the chap who used to do all Charlton's local scouting. All the lads would have known him at the time. And right, and he said he would send this fellow to see him, and I never heard anything about the result. But the top and bottom of it was that Chelsea crept in. And they obviously offered the Greaves more money than Ted Fenton was offering. So he ended up at Chelsea. But they were doing a lot of backdoor things then. And one of our own players, Sid Hobbins, who couldn't get into the first team because of Sam Bartram. I remember the first time he did. And poor Sid had waited for seasons to get into this team. We went up to Main Road, Manchester. It was a dreadful ground for us, and we lost 5-2. I think it was the biggest defeat in my time. Lost 5-2. And poor Sid Hobbins, 2 had been a big score against us for years. And poor Sid Hobbins had to come in that day. And he saw the funny side of it, It was a terrible thing to happen. But he was doing some of the scouting. And he and another chap, and it was highly publicised in the People and the News of the World and all this type of thing, how they had cheated right, left and centre over players, acquiring players. But these are stories, true stories, as accurately as I can recount them. And they're just coming back to me as I'm sitting talking.
They're fascinating because they give such an insight into the sort of the era, the characters.
Well, this was all the thing, how to get schoolboy players, you see, because after the war there was a shortage and people were virtually starting from square one instead of continuing where they left off. You couldn't just wipe out the war years, they all added up, didn't they?
Yeah.
I can remember the first time I ever came to Charlton, stepping out onto the platform at King's Cross, and it would be hard to describe the feeling. The first time when I came to sign, he'd been up to see us and everything had been ironed out. It was just a formality, and I was at home for the, right from the first moment I stepped out of that.
On the platform, King's Cross.
Yes.
You just had that feeling.
Yes.
You'd never been there.
And every time I came back to King's Cross, I felt like that. I always felt, and I'd lived all my life in the North East, obviously, but I don't know, Charlton just seemed to be hand in glove for me, and that was
anything to do with the fact there were already so many players from the North East?
Yes, probably so, because regularly, without fail, the team consisted of 8 Northeasters and 3 others. That's right, and including the manager and the trainer, both from the Northeast. We were a Northeast colony. Remarkably, in those days, Newcastle, Sunderland and Middlesbrough, the 3 Northeast teams, never at any time had as many Northeasters in as we had. They were usually full of Scotsmen. Now, that is literally true. And we used to, each one of us say, I'd like to go home for the weekend after the match, because your relatives came to see you, you see. If they didn't, nobody else would. You arranged to go home and be back for Tuesday morning's training. And so the team returned, the manager, the trainer and 3 others, and the basket. Now that was true, literally true, almost on every occasion.
Every time you played it.
We just all dissolved, But that's how it used to be. And I can't remember it being much else.
Harold Hobbs said something to me about that, actually. He said that if they were playing in the North East, there'd be him, maybe...
That's right.
Sailor.
Not enough to play cards.
Yes. And everyone else would be all sort of nice, getting nice meals and at home with the family.
Had to call a couple of strangers
sitting there in the hotel, bored stiff.
Call a couple of strangers in out of the corridor, say, have a seat, make yourself at home. Would you like to play cards?
So what was it like when you signed on then? So you came down, did anyone meet you at King's Cross when you first came down to London? Or did you make your own way over to the ground?
I couldn't tell you.
When was it when...
I just could not tell you.
They met us and took us in the car. Well, was that when I came down first?
Oh, that was when you came, well.
I can't remember.
But I could have been met, but I don't remember being met. They'll probably only give you instructions, go down to platform 8 at the underground at King's Cross, to London Bridge and catch a train down to either Charlton or Blackheath,
Did you go with Tommy at the time? Did you both go down together? Tommy Dawson?
It's just possible we did.
Because it was both of us.
It's possible we went together. But I just don't remember.
Do you recall actually signing?
No. I don't. It's just
really
funny.
many of these sort of things.
All I can remember is playing football. That's true.
It's like that.
I can't remember much. I was fascinated with the life. You came to know all sorts of celebrities like stage people, Billy Cotton and his band and all this type of thing, because Billy Cotton was one of our most keen supporters. And
well, you recorded the version of Red Red Robin, didn't you?
That's right. And Only 5 Minutes More, that was one of the popular songs. Only 5 minutes more, give me 5 minutes more. And we were beating Newcastle in a semi-final at Leeds, 4-0 with 5 minutes to go. And that song became very popular, and it became sort of synonymous with that 4-0 lead with 5 minutes to go.
Well, the crowd were singing it.
And when, yes, everybody got used to it.
Yeah.
And I remember us making sort of public appearances. I'll tell you what one was for, the Bolton disaster. They had a disaster on the terraces at Burnden Park. And there was a time when we all appeared at Lewisham Hippodrome.
That's right, we were up at the park.
Yes, that's right. And
We all went on, didn't
we all went on the stage, and that was, you know, Don Welsh would tell you, he used to love leading the community singing, give me 5 minutes more. He was the only one who knew the words anyway. I remember Sailor Brown at Lewisham Hippodrome. People came on, we didn't sort of march on or anything like that, we sort of all just drifted on from both wings. Sailor Brown came on with a mop and a bucket. He'd tell you that. Yeah. But, you know, this was the way players were in those days. You always had to have your wits about you. When we played in Middlesbrough, we used to stay at Saltburn, the coast. It's a good half hour's run from Darlington. Stops at every station, you know. And where Teesside Airport is now, we used to call it Middleton Monroe. There's a station, a little open station, like a country station. And it used to stop there. Nobody got in or out, but it used to stop there. And there was a time when, just for convenience sake, Jimmy Trotter had us all taking leather grips, you see, with our own personal kit in, and we were on the way to Saltburn, and we stopped at, I think, Middleton, and somebody, well, Benny Fenton was always doing something, you know, and he was down, and he had to get out of the car. It wasn't a corridor train, you know. And he got out and left the door open, and he went for something to somebody in one of the other compartments, some other place. And while he was out, God knows wanted to put his bag on the station seat. He dashed back, got into the train, slammed the door. Hey, Benny, where's your bag? Look. Out on the seat. He got out and the train went. Well, we didn't tell Jimmy Trotter or anybody. He got spare. You know, you didn't do things like that. Everything was according to the book at Charlton. You would never be paid a penny less, but you'd never be paid a button more either. You know, that type of club. And you had to be just right. And it was every half hour, the system, so it was all right. You'd get the next train before we were very far down the line. Yeah, they did some things, honestly.
You did when you were abroad once or twice, you did have some dark eyes on, didn't you?
Oh, aye. Especially when we were in Turkey.
In Turkey.
We did a lot of touring at Charlton, and that was a great feature. You know, to me, all right, the games were the most important thing, but it was an education, some of the things.
See it the world as well.
Yes.
What year did you join?
Well, I joined just before the war.
So 38.
So all that sort of thing was after the war. And as I say, I was 30 when I came out of the forces, which sort of limited the rest of my career. But even if it had only been for a year, it would have been something to come back to Charlton just for 1
So
year.
where did you go? You played in Paris?
Where didn't we go? Paris, we racing club. I've got photographs of that match. I was skipper in that match, yes. I'm saying that because it had certain significance. It was the only time Jimmy Seed ever complimented me.
Really?
He would say nice things about you to other people, but he didn't often waste breath telling you what a good player you were. He used to say, he was once challenged. Now, I can't remember, some of the other lads might, I can't remember who it was, and they more or less grumbled. This was at the time when Jimmy Seed wasn't held in awe quite so much as he'd been by the older players. It was when the newer players were coming in. And they said, you know, you're always telling us our weaknesses and our mistakes. And he said something to the effect, I can't remember the word perfectly, but he said something to the effect, you'll know when you've done the right thing, I'll tell you when you haven't. You know, that type of thing. That was his philosophy. But he only once ever, he sent for me actually, And there was always something, when he sent for me, it was about the house getting decorated or something like that. And he hated things like that because there weren't any part of football. But he sent for me and he said, I want to say this. He hadn't been with us to this particular match in Paris, and the directors had come back, and I'd made certain tactical changes in the team. I wouldn't have dared change the team he picked. He once told me about that. I moved the 2 full backs one day. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But this particular day, it involved Charlie Purves. And I can't just remember what it was. But anyway, it made me seem something different to the directors sitting in the stand. But they came back, and they were full of this move I'd made. And the racing club were the kingpins in France at that time. And we beat them. And they'd come back and said something complimentary to Jimmy Seed, and he just said, I just want to pass it on. And he more or less said, you can go now. that was him. But the other thing, we were playing Preston in a cup tie, and there was snow. It had been cleared, and it was in great big heaps around the ground. The ground was playable all right, but we had 2 backs, Jock Campbell and Frank Locke. And Tommy Finney started off on the left side. I forget the lad who played outside right. He was a well-known player at the time, a Scott side, Angus Morrison. And Tommy Finney didn't like the look of Jock Campbell, and he switched over. So I told the 2 full backs to go with their respective wingers, because both of them had their wingers like that. And Jimmy Seed rebuked me for doing that.
Really?
He said, he more or less said that, don't get the idea that you can pick a better team than I can. I can't remember again his words, but that was the gist of it. And he told me, well, it did no harm, because I can tell you we beat Preston this day 5-0. And Tommy Finney, before I switched the backs over, Jock Campbell had piled him into the snow, and he thought it was me. And Tom Finney and I from wartime, you see, I was up in Lancashire, and I knew him quite well. He was playing for Preston whenever he could. He was in the army, but Preston was just down the road from us, and I was playing for Bolton Wanderers, so we came across each other quite a bit, and then in forces football. But he couldn't get over the fact that I would pile him into the snow, and it wasn't me at all, it was Jock Campbell.
Well, some of the supporters called him Slasher.
Oh, you know, we had a friend, a doctor. He was a war hero in Belgium, and we went over to Belgium. Where was it? Liège. And this doctor and his wife, she was an English woman. They became friends of ours. They came over here. They sat with us here in this room.
Whenever they came over to England, didn't they?
And they were a remarkable couple. But during the war, he had been the sort of underground man, lovely man, Oxford educated. And she was a real lady, wasn't she? She came to me after the match one day and she said, I wonder if you would accept a little gift. So I didn't know what it consisted of. When the gift came, it came in a great big tea chest thing. And it was piled to the top. And there were 18, she said, how many are there in your party? I said, 18. There were 18 packages of all sorts, you name it, but it was like a treasure chest
Get, it was
of food that you couldn't get, but chocolate biscuits and luxuries, you know. And she made up all these parcels. And I gave one to each of the team, and she sent things for our team. She sent we had some little shoes, didn't we, that she gave for David, was it a Stuart? And
his first shoes, little lace-up shoes.
They had an XK120, is it, or XJ120 car, but it was the sports model. And in those days, you know, this was rare. It was just like the what they call the Italian car. Ferrari. It looked like a Ferrari, but what was it? It was a.
We've got a snap somewhere.
It was a foreign car. No, a British car.
British
It was
car
what Margaret Thatcher has, only the sports model.
Jaguar.
Jaguar. And they used to go holidays into the Alps and northern Italy and that sort of thing. And they were told that they could stay at this posh hotel if they would just leave their car outside the front door. Weren't they?
I think we've got a snap of it
It was
outside.
stage free because you know what Continentals are like for cars,
Yeah.
for cars, full stop.
Yeah.
And they said this was a terrific advert to them. They had crowds around this car, and they didn't think of it other than their own their own vehicle kind of thing. They brought it over here, didn't they? They came here with it. And of course every eye turned in its direction, and because it was red, that was more so, you know, but it was, we have a picture of it,
I
haven't
think
we?
there's a snap somewhere.
When they stayed at Walthamstow with her sister.
But she used to send us these little chocolate bunnies and things when we couldn't get
At
chocolate in the
Christmas.
war for the children, you
They
know.
would make up parcels.
And she
you know.
couldn't get over Stuart when he was only a baby, and she said he was a real footballer then, you know.
Well, did you meet them when you were on tour?
Yes.
Those when you
Well,
played.
what I was going to tell you about Jack Campbell, I've again gone round the houses, but these stories flood back to you know. Jack Campbell was sent off. The other team, Liège, I forget what the full title is. I see it now and again in the European Cup. They put a couple of imports in to strengthen their team on the day, like all these club teams do or did. I don't know whether they still do it, but they used to do this. It was a regular ploy. And they'd put this winger in, and he was known for the way you know, he was one of these reckless kind of characters. And he met his match in Jock Campbell, and Jock had him over the line, you know. And this chap ran up after one of these little fracas, and he kicked Jock behind the legs. So Jock turned round and grabbed him by the throat and had him on the ground and sat on him. And the referee came and sent Jock off and let this fellow stay on. Well, this Dr. Bayweir was sitting in the crowd. He was responsible partly for us being there. And although he wasn't a Belgian football authority, he was as good as. He knew everybody and was influential. And that was never reported. It was just let go and forgotten.
They were sent off.
The fact that Jack was sent off, yeah. So he never suffered anything on account of it.
And that's how you got to know this man.
Well, it wasn't how we got to know. He just happened to be at that match at that time. That was what I was going to say. They'd already made contact with us. But they tell where we were staying.
How about other tours? Where else did you go?
Where didn't we go? We went everywhere.
To Turkey.
We played a whole tour of games at Turkey. And the aircraft, the people who were contracted with the aircraft, they forgot about us. They did. That's literally true. They forgot. Somebody slipped up and we were left there. We played head tennis every day up in the hills. We used to go, and the ball used to pick up a sort of yellow dust, so that when we came off, we were like Chinese, you know. And we played, that's all we ever did, just whiling the days away. And then I think the Glixtons, it was through the Glixtons, they did all their business through this particular firm. I don't know whether it was a travel firm or a car hire, aircraft hire firm, what it was, but they put pressure on them and said, look, if you want our business, you get those players back here. Because it was costing money every day for us. Well, it wasn't costing us money, strangely enough, it was costing the Turkish authorities.
Really?
But they kept saying each time we beat one of their teams, we played all our games in the same stadium. It was their Olympic stadium. It hadn't been completed at the time. And even in those days, they had wire netting all the way around between the spectators. And
Had you seen it before?
I'd never seen it before. And we were always told, well, you know, you're not really beating our full strength teams. Their international team was away, I think, in Greece, and they said, you know, if we'd been at full strength, it would have been a different story. So when their international team came back, I don't know how it came about, but Jimmy Seed, who wouldn't normally agree to anything like this, just the scheduled games, you know, he agreed for us to play their international team. We beat them 6-0. They had a chap, they used to speak about him like people used to speak about Stanley Matthews. But he wasn't like Stanley Matthews. He looked like a big point duty copper. He had a great big moustache, too tall. And he was up against Jock Campbell. And any of the lads would tell you who were there. Jock saw him off in the first minute. And he was like a baby. He just cried to the trainers, and in no time they had him off. He didn't last 5 minutes, literally. And we went on, we beat them 6-0.
And you see photographs of Jock. I mean,
I've got a photograph of that group. It's only being introduced to some celebrity.
The game where you had to run for the coach.
Yes, the same stadium, but that wasn't the game.
Stadium.
That was the. We had to go back to that stadium to play these. When you came out of the stadium at the dressing room end, you went down steps like St. Paul's, whole flights of steps. And there was a crowd waiting for us. They'd been throwing stones over the top of this balustrade, you know. One hit Chris Duffy and he went down. And Jimmy Trotter was out on the touchline. Stop the match, there's a player laid injured there. He didn't know what had happened. Came on, and Chris told him he'd been shot. Chris heard a bang, and this stone hit him. This is true, absolutely true. And he was feeling for the blood. He couldn't feel any blood, but he'd been hit, and it must have been just at the moment he had this blood. Anyway, he recovered from his gunshot, and he went on playing. But after the match, they were incensed, and we were locked up in our dressing room. And it all sort of settled down. But when we got outside the ground, they were waiting down by the coach, all very quietly, but so many of them. And, you know, wherever you go in Turkey, you'd think it was sort of slum clearance or something. There's always plenty of ammunition, plenty of concrete and stuff. And so they let us get halfway down the steps, and then the mood changed. Anyway, we got in the coach, and we all scrambled in and shut the door. We got under the seats, and the driver drove off top speed. Well, the people accompanying us, the police, they had motorbike and sidecar. They ran with us. They got stoned as well. They were there to protect us. Unfortunately, we lived along the Bosphorus at Tarabya. And when we got halfway down the road, you know, they stopped chasing us. But we had to go back the next day to play another match. That was the thing. Oh, it was. But they were great days, you know.
Did you get journalists accompanying you on those tours? British journalists?
Not very often. No, it depended. Jimmy Seed had an abhorrence of reporters.
I've heard about this story about Harold Palmer.
Harold Palmer.
Marching him down the steps.
Yeah, that's right. When he reported the sickness of the night before the semi-final. Yeah.
Wasn't it?
That was a sensation, because Harold Palmer had all the standard newspapers out in London at midday. Charlton players poisoned.
Oh, I remember that.
Aye.
What were you?
People were ringing
see.
up.
It was
I mean,
awful.
imagine the carry on. People were ringing up. We were inundated. And it was genuine.
What
Most of the team Well, we can only think it was
Different
something
foods,
some of them
wasn't
had eaten. We'd all more or less had the same stuff at supper, like sandwiches. We were never allowed to overindulge or anything. It had to be something we'd eaten together. Well, so I wasn't too bad, but I wasn't like the others. I mean, Gordon Hurst, I can remember particularly, he was ashen.
Mm.
If you'd had other players, you know, one or two had to be left out.
Mm.
But we struck it rich. It was the first time Don Welsh had played for months on end because he'd been injured. And if Don Welsh had been anybody but Don Welsh, he'd have broken Joe Payne's goal scoring record that day.
Yeah.
He scored, I don't know what he scored, I don't think he scored a hat-trick or anything like that, but he scored, and we took off, and we were 3 up in 20 minutes. And this was the Newcastle team that was going to win the cup and win everything else in sight, you know, all the names. Their forward line would have been worth a king's ransom today. And we absolutely slaughtered them. It was a real, you know, it wasn't the fact that we won, but the manner of it.
Mm.
And the fact that we'd had all this trouble, was it at Harrogate?
It was somewhere
Harrogate.
because it was in the press that, you know, we only heard through the paper.
You know, and everybody
That you'd
thought
been ill
everybody thought it was a hoax, that we just put the story out to mislead
cover
you.
up
It
the
wasn't
loss.
a hoax at all, and it was the bulk of the team.
Mm.
I remember some of them stayed in darkened rooms right up to the time when we left for the kick-off.
Really?
They couldn't face any
And what
food.
was Jimmy Trotter doing to try and...
Well, he was just applying the usual things like tummy powders and all that sort of thing, or maybe a little bit of a drop of brandy in hot water or something like that. I mean, that's all he could do. I mean, it was almost a mystery to us.
Mm.
I mean, here on the Friday night, we'd all been fit and ready to go, and on the Saturday morning, we looked like something that had just been washed out.
Mm.
So that it really concerned us. But Jimmy C, being a northeaster, and you know, all the headlines seemed to sort of favour Newcastle. And what they call the old director at Newcastle, he was a great friend of ours.
I can't remember.
He was Newcastle, Mr. Newcastle United, the chairman of Newcastle. And he said to the press, "We're as good as at Wembley," when the draw came out.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Smith said if he could have smoked 12 cigars at once on that homeward run, he would have done it. He couldn't have been more chuffed. He couldn't have cared whether we won the cup ultimately or not.
Mm.
That was his heyday.
Mm.
The day we beat Newcastle, because it was so humiliating. We absolutely thrashed them. And the beauty of it was I was still in the forces, and Tommy Pearson, we went to the theatre with Tommy Pearson and his wife, didn't we? We were close friends.
Yeah.
And the other players as well, you know, Jackie, you know, the centre forward, Milburn, and all these people, we were all close friends. They were just as mystified as we were. They were absolutely mystified. They just, I mean, everybody used to have a respect for Charlton, but somehow or another this day, everything went for us, you know. But what I was going to say, Don Welsh, Don, 3 up, and Don was swashbuckling, you know. He was just sort of pivoting round and lashing balls all over the place around the goal, but on the wrong side of it, you know. And if we had needed goals, I'm sure he could have had pockets full.
I mean, he said about that game that is the game that stands out in his memory as
Fantastic.
the best game he has ever played.
Fantastic. Do you know, the Newcastle fans were cheering us, not out of derision, because, you know, there were Newcastle fans first and foremost, but they even wanted photographs. I've got some snaps somewhere, small snaps. I don't know how I got them. I don't know who gave me them. But this is how we were with Charlton fans. If they took photographs, they sent you them. And I've got these snaps, and it shows you us with the Newcastle fans. None of our fans there. And they brought a coffin.
Yeah.
And this was going to be the burial of Charlton Athletic. And they took it outside at the back of the stand at Leeds and had a bonfire. And it was amazing, the scenes. But they were, I tell you, I couldn't think of fans who acted more commendably. No fans could have ever been as disappointed as they were. They had a team there. It was a team of all talents. I don't ever remember them ever beating us. We always the day I was telling you about when Mrs. Seed was in the passage, said we'll get peaceful Monday morning. We beat Newcastle 5-2 that day. We could always the North East teams we used to take apart. Nothing pleased the boss more than that.
How did the buzz of winning the cup compare to the buzz of winning that semi-final? Was there a comparison, or was it just inevitable after winning?
No, nothing's inevitable. I think when we won the cup, we had a very difficult game in one sense.
Could I say it wasn't a classic?
It wasn't a classic because you had two defences that was so much on top. It wasn't that the forward lines were particularly weak, but our strength, our main strength, was always really in defence. After Don and Sailor Brown sort of got, just a little bit over the top. Funnily enough, when players get over the top, often they seem to get more injury as well. That's maybe true. Maybe they do succumb to injuries a bit more. But we started to have forward lines that weren't our forward line, if you understand. Although on that occasion, Tommy Dawson was in. I remember Jimmy Seed in the bus saying to Tommy Dawson, "I wish you could play as well as you can sing." Tommy was a great song leader in the bus, all the love songs and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But who else was there? I just forget. Oh, you had the photograph in one of those books, and I've got it upstairs. I can't just remember who the forward line was. Leslie Fell and them played the year before, didn't they? Oh, Gordon Hurst it was outside, right? Gordon and Tommy Dawson. Bill Robinson played centre forward. He came to us from Sunderland. Outside left was Chris Duffy, who lost a player somewhere. Who was inside left?
Is it Whittaker?
Is there something wrong with this picture? No, Bill Whittaker played half-back.
He was half-back, was he?
He played at half-back. He didn't play the year before.
No.
He was brought in. Charlie Revel had to cry off at the last minute. He was same as Peter Croker had to the year before.
Broken leg, didn't he?
Yes, that's right. I remember him doing that.
Really?
On the far touchline where the big terrace is at Charlton. He was running off against Spurs to pick a ball up quickly to come and take the throw, because so far down the line he took the throws, and so far further I would take the throws. And this particular day he ran quickly, and the track had subsided below the retainer board.
Yeah.
And he stood half on the board and half off, and you could hear it all over the ground, crack. And Jack Shreve, Harold Phipps centre half, May wing half, Bill Whittaker wing, Peter Croker full back. So the forward line must have been. I was short of a player here, surely. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, Don!
Don't worry about that.
See, I wouldn't have made anything else but a footballer. Can't count. 1, 2, 3. Yes, that was right. Don played. But you see, our previous forward line had been Leslie Fell. Gordon had watched it the year before. He was in the Marines at Deal.
Really?
And he watched it from the terrace, and then fancy, and then the next year you play.
Yeah.
Tommy Dawson, he took Cilla Brown's place. He took Arthur Turner's place, and Don was there the year before.
Arthur Turner was an amateur, wasn't he?
And Chris Duffy, did he play the year before? Can't remember. or Hobbes?
No, Hobbes didn't play. Hobbes never played.
No, he
rugby.
didn't play. No, it must have been Christopher, I think. And yet something at the back of my mind
What's that left?
would say he didn't. I should remember.
Well, I should know as well.
Yes. You probably know more about these statistics and things than I do.
Well, you see, well, I'm not a statistician. It's not really the statistics that, although they're interesting, and sometimes in their own right, I'm more interested in the stories that surround it all. So, winning the cup, what was it?
That looked a strange team to me.
Yeah.
You know, that wasn't the best team we ever had. In a sense, you know, it's only opinion. It only can ever be opinion. But the team that lost the cup the year before, when we played Derby, was a better team than this team.
Well, Sailor Brown had a
it was a
fantastic
team.
game, didn't he?
It was a team you would. Well, I thought that's where we fell down a little bit up front. You know, we somehow or another up in front we never got going. That's the only term I can use. They didn't do themselves justice up in front, and it seemed to be a battle of two half back lines.
So in the previous years, Bert Turner.
Bert Turner and me,
He'd moved up to half-back.
and Jack Oakes, of course, and not Harold Phipps.
Yeah.
We had about 6 changes in that team from the previous team.
There is a lot of changes. I mean, well, Gordon Hurst wasn't there, was he?
Well, Tommy Dawson wasn't there, Gordon Hurst wasn't, Bill Robinson wasn't, Bill Whittaker wasn't there, Harold Phipps wasn't there, Peter Croker wasn't there, so you can tell it's almost a different team. And it's just one of those ironies of football that you win the cup with a team that you wouldn't consider as good as the team that lost the cup. It wasn't that we were playing a better team the year before, although they were a good team, Derby. The circumstance of that game was that, again, the two half back lines, or the two defences, you might say, just took hold of the game to such an extent that possibly if we'd got the first goal of extra time, we could have gone on.
Or if you had scored, if there had been
Well,
goal
you've seen it happen on the television, where a team scores and they don't look back. A team takes a wicket and up go the tails. They bowl faster, they bowl more accurately. You know, it's a psychological uplift, and this is what happens in sport. And they got this second goal, first one of extra time, and from there on, nothing would go right for us. And well, we were struggling. The only thing I could say was that we'd played a lot of games in the weeks before the semi-final, simply because that year every round of the cup was home and away. So you say, well, that was true also of Derby. But you see, they were never going to win the league, but we had a chance of winning both, and might well have done it, and we fell between the two.
Was Charlton the only team to get to a cup final whilst losing a match?
That's right, Fulham, at Fulham. Yeah.
To leave you for a minute, I've just remembered, I must
All
go
right,
to the bank.
yes, all right.
You'll probably be still, I won't be many minutes, because
Right.
I must catch them
Okay.
before they shoot. I've just remembered I had to go this afternoon. I was going to go this morning, I didn't. So I'll just...
Tell them not to move away, we need them.
No, but, you know, don't rush away, I shall be back. I won't be long.
Yeah, come on, sit in an easier
Yeah.
chair.
Well, I'm quite comfortable sitting there. We just need to be near this.
Oh,
That's the only. Well, you can sit in the comfortable chair. I'll sit up here.
That's right. You are. Put the other chair up.
That's fine. That's fine. I can lean on the table. That's fine. So, was there any truth in the story that either Jimmy Seed or someone, after you lost in '46, came to the dressing room or on the coach or whatever and said, "Never mind, lads, you'll be here next year"?
That could have been true. It could.
Yeah.
Actually, I can't remember it. But a lot of these things, you know, you can imagine the atmosphere of a dressing room, on the coach and all that sort of thing. But I can remember something that Jimmy Seed put into print in the next year's cup final. What was it? It was the souvenir and menu of the meal, the cup celebration the next year. And he said how I'd said to him, we'll win the cup this year, it's ours. And the reason for that was that we'd played Blackburn Rovers, and it was a treacherous day. The valley was just like Streatham Ice Rink. And one of their players ran after a ball only because he couldn't stop. A winger running in at the far end of the pitch. And he just couldn't stop, he couldn't get his grip. And Sam Bartram came out and for once took his eye off the ball. The next thing, the ball's behind Sam, and the player, who had no intention of colliding or going for the ball, he skated past, and he's got the goal at his mercy. And because he couldn't get the grip himself, put the ball in the side netting. There's never been a let-off like it. It was incredible. And I should think you'd find scores of people who remember that. We took the goal kick. As usual, Sam kicked it right up into their half, and there was an infringement given in our favour. And I think it was Billy Robinson. And I might be wrong there. I could be wrong there. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. Somebody took that free kick, and we scored from it. Now, we were one down at one end, and now we're one up at our end. And I said to Jimmy Seed, after that, the cup's got to be ours. You know, it was just the irony of the thing, really. I wasn't trying to be a prophet. But he printed that in the club souvenir thing.
What about the, because in 47 the players produced a booklet.
Yes, that's right. Oh, I tell you what that was. It was one of those things you'd like to forget. It was just a quickly worked out idea. It was the first early beginnings, really, of people trying to make money out of a cup final. You couldn't make it out of legitimate sources. For instance, the biggest amount we were paid in bonus was £36 for winning the cup. The losers got £24 bonus.
Which was a fair amount of money, but
well, it was a fair amount if you're looking at the working man of those days. Our wages were reasonable if you look at the working man of those days. But we were trying to make the perks, you know, doing things for the perks, and some of them were very keen and enthusiastic about it, and the rest of us weren't all that bothered, you know, we couldn't have cared less, really. But we went along, we felt it was a bit one-sided if some were striving to do this and others were just letting them. And we did this booklet. I don't know whether we would have one now. We possibly could. But it wasn't anything that you would show to your friends, you know. It wasn't something you'd swank about. It was, well, it was informative, and there was a photograph of everybody in the pool, and it was hastily done, I suppose, on those grounds. It was quite commendable.
Whose idea was it, do you know?
I don't know, but one or two of them. We had a little committee, you see. This is what you do. You know, looking back, I would think Christopher could have been on it. Maybe Don Welsh. I don't know. But they worked enthusiastically for these things.